The world rewards noise and speed, yet the person who wins most often sits quietly and thinks twice. You don't rise by accident. You rise because you learn to stay calm when others panic, because you plan while others chase distraction. That's the quiet edge, the ability to move with thought, not reaction. Most people treat life like a sprint, loud, urgent, immediate. They respond to notifications, to insults, to every new trend. They prove themselves by volume. You, if you choose otherwise, learn a different rule. Control begins inside. It starts with the mind that refuses to be pulled by every impulse. This is not about being emotionless. It's about being deliberate. It's about training your attention so that you don't give it away to everything that screams for it. When the room gets loud, you don't match them. You slow down. You breathe. You watch. That gap, the space between stimulus and response, is where strategy lives. That space is your advantage. Think of it like a storm. Most people are inside it. They're tossed by wind, reacting to every gust. The strategist sits in the eye, not detached from reality, but rooted in it. From that center, decisions are clearer, moves are precise, energy is kept for what matters. The Stoics taught clarity, detachment, discipline, because they understood that the true battle is internal. If you master your inner life, the outer world becomes manageable. If you can stay steady when others flinch, your presence itself starts to influence outcomes. People feel it even before you speak. They sense someone who is not easy to rattle. That's power, quiet, earned, and difficult to mimic. You build that power by practicing small things, letting 10 provocations pass without replying, waiting before you commit, listening more than you speak. These look like nothing to the crowd, but they build a mind that sees patterns where others see only noise. They turn impulse into intention. Over time, those choices compound. Calm becomes your baseline. Clarity becomes your tool. If you're tired of being pulled by the tide, tired of reacting and regretting, this is where you start. Begin with stillness. Carve out silence in your day. Learn to sit with a thought until it clarifies. Watch what your feelings want you to do, and then do what your reason says. Most people move quickly because they're afraid of what happens when things get quiet. Silence exposes what they haven't dealt with. Stillness reveals the thoughts they've been running from. That's why the majority spend their lives seeking noise to avoid meeting themselves. But the strategist, the one who rises above the ordinary, learns to reverse that instinct. You don't run from silence, you use it, because silence is where clarity begins. When you sit still long enough, the fog that most people live inside starts to lift. You begin noticing things others miss, the patterns in their behavior, the inconsistencies in their words, the invisible motives behind their actions. Noise hides these things, stillness reveals them. This is the shift that creates advantage. Not loudness, not force, awareness. When you stop reacting to every emotion, every comment, every sudden urge, you create space. And that space becomes intelligence. You observe, you process, you understand. You begin seeing not just what is happening, but why it is happening. That understanding is rare. And rare things carry power. Most people act because they feel something. The strategist acts because they've studied the moment long enough to know what truly matters. While the crowd rushes, you pause. While the world shouts, you listen. And in that pause, in that listening, you find angles and options that others overlook. It's not magic. It's discipline, the discipline to resist the pull of urgency. There's a reason great generals, thinkers, and leaders all withdrew before they made their most important decisions, not because they were unsure, but because clarity never appears in the middle of chaos. The mind needs quiet to sharpen. It needs space to see the long game. And when you practice that kind of intentional stillness, you stop living, move to move, and start thinking 3, 5, 10 moves ahead. But here's the truth people avoid. Sitting alone with your thoughts is work, hard work. You have to face the fears, desires, doubts, and impulses you've ignored. You have to separate emotion from truth. You have to admit where you've been acting blindly. Most won't do that. They choose noise over honesty. But you, if you want to rise, can't afford that luxury. Because the moment you learn to think clearly in silence, you become dangerous in the best way. People won't know how to provoke you. They won't know how to manipulate your reactions. They won't understand how you remain calm when things fall apart. But you will. You built that calm deliberately in the quiet, when no one was watching. Most people fear quiet more than failure. They don't say it out loud, but silence threatens them. Silence forces them to hear the thoughts they've buried. Stillness makes them face the emotions they've tried to outrun. And because of that fear, they cling to noise conversations, opinions, notifications, distractions, anything that keeps them from meeting themselves. But the strategist, the person who rises above the predictable path, understands something crucial. Silence is not the enemy. Silence is the classroom. Stillness is the training ground. Because clarity doesn't come from motion, it comes from depth. And depth only appears when the world falls quiet long enough for you to finally listen. When you sit in silence, not for escape, but for understanding, your senses sharpen, your patterns become visible. The haze that most people mistake for normal life begins to fade. You start noticing the way people talk, the gaps between their words, the things they avoid, the motives beneath their surface. You see the cycles in your own behavior too, how you react when pressured, what triggers your frustration, where your discipline breaks. Noise hides these things, but stillness reveals them with uncomfortable honesty. And that honesty becomes advantage, because strategy is impossible without awareness. The world rewards those who understand what others overlook. When you stop reacting instantly, you create space, space that becomes insight, insight that becomes leverage, leverage that becomes power. Most people move because they feel something. They speak because they need to fill the air. They act because silence feels like weakness. But the strategist moves only after understanding the moment, not before. You're not slower, you're sharper. You're not detached, you're deliberate. There's a reason great thinkers, warriors, and leaders throughout history withdrew before making their biggest moves. Not out of fear, but out of discipline. They knew clarity never arrives in the middle of chaos. The mind needs room to breathe. It needs silence to organize truth from emotion. It needs stillness to see the long game instead of the next step. But here's the part most people avoid. Real stillness requires courage. To sit alone with your thoughts is to face everything you've been avoiding. The doubts, the insecurities, the desires, the habits you pretend you don't have. Silence shows you the truth. And truth, at first, is uncomfortable. That's why few people ever become powerful internally. They escape the very process that would make them strong, but not you. If you choose this path, you become someone the world can't easily shake. People won't understand why their chaos doesn't move you, why their pressure doesn't break you, why their noise doesn't pull you. They won't know that you trained for this, not in crowds, but in quiet. Emotion is loud. It rises fast, hits hard, and demands immediate action. That's why most people are controlled by it, not because they're weak, but because they were never taught how to stand still inside a storm. They feel something, and move instantly. They get triggered and respond without thinking. They confuse urgency with importance, and they treat every feeling as a command instead of a signal. But the strategist learns a different truth. Emotions are visitors, not rulers. You don't silence them, you don't suppress them, you simply refuse to hand them the steering wheel. This is emotional discipline, the ability to feel fully, but decide calmly. The world thinks discipline is about force, about overpowering your feelings with cold logic. But that's not it. Discipline is awareness. It's the ability to sit with what you feel long enough to understand it. Anger, fear, insecurity, embarrassment, excitement, these are not enemies, they are messengers. They tell you where your weaknesses are, where your wounds are, where your desires point. Emotion becomes dangerous only when it becomes automatic. That's when people say things they regret, take actions that damage their future, fall into patterns that keep them small. And afterward, they apologize to themselves, saying, "I didn't mean that." But meaning isn't the issue, control is. The disciplined person treats emotion the way a warrior treats a weapon, with respect. You understand its power, you understand its usefulness. But you never swing it blindly. You never attack just because something sparked a reaction. You hold your position. You wait until the emotion settles enough for you to see clearly. Only then do you choose your move. That pause, that tiny space, is the difference between chaos and mastery. Think about every moment you've regretted, the argument you escalated, the message you sent too quickly, the decision you rushed because fear pushed you. Those weren't failures of intelligence, they were failures of patience. You reacted before reality revealed itself. Emotional discipline teaches you the opposite. If someone insults you, you don't need to respond. If a situation feels tense, you don't need to force clarity. If fear appears, you don't need to run. You acknowledge the feeling, but you decide the action. That's what makes you calm under pressure. That's what makes you unpredictable to those who want to provoke you. They can't read you because you're no longer controlled by impulse. You're guided by intention. And intention is silent, steady, and powerful. This is the beginning of inner strength, not the absence of emotion, but the mastery of it. Detachment is one of the most misunderstood forms of strength. People hear the word and think it means coldness, indifference, or emotional distance. But real detachment isn't about shutting down your heart. It's about protecting your center. It's about caring deeply without letting what you care about control you. Because the moment your peace depends on something outside of you, a person, a reaction, an outcome, you've handed your power away. Most people cling. They cling to relationships out of fear, to identities they've outgrown, to outcomes they can't control. They cling because they don't trust themselves to survive loss, silence, or uncertainty. And that fear makes them fragile. When the thing they cling to shifts, their entire sense of self collapses with it. But the strategist learns a different rhythm. Hold everything with open hands, not because you don't care, but because you've matured enough to understand that nothing external is guaranteed. What stays, stays. What leaves, leaves. And your peace should remain untouched either way. Detachment doesn't reduce love. It purifies it. It removes desperation from affection, fear from connection, ego from involvement. You no longer need to force anything. You no longer chase. You no longer bend yourself to fit other people's expectations. You give, but you don't give yourself away. You love, but you don't lose yourself in the process. You show up fully, but you don't collapse when someone walks away. Seneca said, "He is most powerful who has power over himself." This is what he meant. When your emotional world is stable, external chaos cannot break you. Detachment is strength because it teaches you how to stay whole no matter what changes around you. It teaches you patience with uncertainty, acceptance of reality, and faith in your own ability to adapt. You stop demanding closure from others. You stop relying on their validation to feel secure. You stop tying your worth to someone's attention, approval, or presence. And ironically, this calm independence makes you more magnetic, not because you're trying to attract anyone, but because people feel the difference between someone who needs them and someone who chooses them. The less you cling, the more you draw. The more centered you become, the more respect you gain. Carl Jung said, "What you resist persists." Clinging is resistance to change, to loss, to uncertainty. Detachment is acceptance, not passive, but powerful. It frees your energy. It frees your mind. It frees your path. When you detach, you stop confusing connection with control. You stop mixing love with fear. You stop settling for situations that shrink you. Your life becomes cleaner, quieter, and more aligned with who you truly are. And that's the point. Detachment gives you back to yourself. Control is another concept people often misunderstand. They imagine it as domination, the ability to bend others, shape outcomes, or force the world to behave a certain way. But that isn't control. That's insecurity dressed as power. Real control has nothing to do with commanding the outside world. Real control begins and ends with mastering yourself. Most people lose control not because life is overwhelming, but because they've never trained their mind to pause before reacting. One comment triggers them. One inconvenience throws them off. One unexpected change collapses their focus. Their emotions take the driver's seat, and their thoughts follow behind. And afterward, they wonder why they keep repeating the same mistakes. Control is not about having no emotion. It's about not being owned by emotion. It's the discipline to notice your impulses without acting on them. It's the ability to breathe through pressure instead of collapsing under it. Marcus Aurelius said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." That statement is simple, but living it requires training. You must learn to create space between what happens and what you choose to do. In that space, that tiny moment of awareness is where your freedom lives. That's where your power is built. Think of the moments you've regretted most. They weren't mistakes of logic, they were mistakes of speed. You reacted too fast. You spoke too soon. You let emotion lead before clarity had a chance to speak. Control protects you from that pattern. It slows time down just enough for you to decide, not just react. The world will always test you. People will push your buttons. Circumstances will shake your patience. Pressure will try to hijack your mind. Control means you refuse to be pulled into every battle you're invited to. Not everything requires your energy. Not everyone deserves a response. Not every moment demands a reaction. Control is subtle. It's quiet. It's the person in the room who listens more than they speak. It's the one who doesn't reveal their thoughts too quickly. It's the one who moves only when movement is necessary. That kind of control makes people uneasy because they can't predict you. They can't provoke you. They can't drag you into their chaos. When your inner world is steady, their outer noise loses its power. You become someone who sets the emotional climate instead of absorbing it. This isn't built overnight. It's a daily practice, catching yourself, correcting yourself, returning to yourself. Every time you choose patience over impulse, you strengthen your foundation. Every time you choose clarity over chaos, you reinforce your edge. Control isn't about holding everything tightly. It's about knowing what actually deserves your grip and releasing everything else. Adaptation is the skill that separates those who survive from those who rise. Most people don't adapt, they endure. They hold on to old habits, old identities, old plans, because change feels like losing control. They cling to what's familiar, even when it no longer serves them. They confuse resistance with strength, and they mistake stubbornness for loyalty. But the strategist knows the truth. Adaptation is not betrayal, it's intelligence. Life shifts constantly, people change, circumstances evolve, opportunities appear and disappear. The untrained mind sees these shifts as threats. The strategic mind sees them as signals. Instead of resisting the new, you study it. Instead of panicking, you adjust. You don't abandon your values, you update your methods. You don't lose yourself, you refine yourself. The world moves fast, but not randomly. There are patterns beneath the chaos, and the person who adapts early becomes the one who leads later. Seneca wrote, "Fate leads the willing and drags the reluctant." That is the essence of adaptation. When you avoid change, life drags you through it anyway, often painfully. But when you meet change willingly, you gain direction, you gain freedom, you gain advantage. Most people fear adaptation because it requires honesty, brutal, personal honesty. You must admit when something isn't working. You must accept when a version of yourself has expired. You must recognize when your excuses have outlived their usefulness. That honesty is uncomfortable, which is why so many remain stuck in patterns they claim to hate. Stagnation feels safer than evolution. But safety is not success. Comfort is not growth. Adaptation begins with observation. What is changing around you? What is changing within you? Which habits support your future and which belong to your past? Once you see clearly, you make small but precise adjustments. You shift your mindset. You upgrade your strategy. You let go of what's heavy. You allow new information to refine your path. And each adjustment, even the small ones, moves you closer to alignment, the state where your actions match your goals instead of your fears. Adaptation also gives you resilience. When your identity isn't tied to rigid forms, you become fluid. When you're not attached to one outcome, you remain calm. When you know how to evolve, you cannot be cornered. You become the type of person who adjusts faster than life can pressure you. The type who bends without breaking. The type who pivots without losing direction. Carl Jung once suggested that what you once enjoyed as a child, the things that made time disappear, often point to your true nature. Adaptation sometimes means returning to that nature, peeling back everything you added to please others, and rediscovering who you were before fear shaped you. In that rediscovery, you gain clarity, creativity, and strength. A rigid mind shatters under pressure. A flexible one transforms pressure into progress. There comes a moment on this path where something shifts inside you. Not suddenly, not dramatically, but unmistakably. You begin moving through the world differently. You're no longer pushed around by emotion, dragged by chaos, or trapped in patterns you didn't choose. You've built stillness. You've built awareness. You've built discipline, detachment, control, and adaptability. And all of that internal work begins to form something deeper, quiet power. Quiet power is not loud. It does not announce itself. It doesn't need recognition to feel real. It doesn't need applause to feel strong. Quiet power is the kind of presence that changes a room before you say a word. Because what you've built within cannot be faked, and people feel what's real long before they understand it. Most people climb by force. They push, they demand, they chase validation, they try to be noticed. But the person who has done the internal work does not need to chase visibility. You become visible naturally because clarity radiates, calm radiates, self-mastery radiates. When you're centered, people sense it. When you're disciplined, people respect it. When you're unattached, people can't control you. And that independence gives you a gravity they don't know how to explain. This is the ascent, not upwards like a ladder, but inward like a deepening. You don't become something new. You uncover what was always there beneath fear, noise, and insecurity. You rise not by reaching higher, but by becoming clearer. You no longer fight for your identity. You embody it. Carl Jung said, "Your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes." That awakening is the ascent. It's when you stop dreaming about strength and start living it. When you stop imagining confidence and start carrying it. When you stop needing reassurance because you have become your own stability. Quiet power doesn't try to dominate. It simply doesn't budge. It doesn't shout. It simply doesn't break. It doesn't impress. It simply moves with intention. People begin to react differently around you. Not because you're intimidating, but because your calm exposes their chaos. Your discipline highlights their excuses. Your steadiness reflects their instability. This isn't arrogance. It's the natural effect of someone who lives by their own inner architecture instead of the world's noise. You no longer match the energy of the room. You set the tone. You no longer rush to respond. You choose your timing. You no longer bend to fit expectations. You walk your own path. This is what it means to win without noise, to lead without force, to influence without effort, to rise without performing. When your foundation is forged in silence, your presence carries the weight of everything you've overcome, everything you've disciplined, everything you've mastered. Sovereignty is the final stage of inner mastery, not a crown, not a title, but a state of being, where your mind, your choices, and your direction belong fully to you. It's the quiet independence that forms when you've lived long enough without collapsing into chaos, when you've trained yourself to stand steady regardless of who stays, who leaves, what changes, or what challenges rise against you. Most people never reach sovereignty because they spend their whole lives reacting to the world. They let circumstances shape them. They let emotions direct them. They let other people's approval define their worth. They move like leaves in the wind blown wherever life sends them, confused why they never feel grounded. But sovereignty is the opposite. It is the moment you stop being moved by every shift around you, because you've already built a center inside you that nothing external can rewrite. This doesn't mean you isolate yourself or stop caring. It means you no longer need the world to validate who you are. You can connect without losing yourself. You can listen without absorbing every emotion in the room. You can face difficulty without imagining it will break you. Your life becomes a deliberate act instead of a reaction. Your choices are yours, not inherited, not pressured, not guided by fear. Sovereignty is emotional independence. You feel deeply, but you are not controlled by feeling. You love fully, but you do not cling. You desire growth, but you do not chase validation. You make decisions not from insecurity, but from clarity. This kind of inner freedom creates a presence that people notice instantly. It's not intimidating, it's grounding. You walk into a room and you don't rush to adjust to everyone's expectations. You don't shrink or overextend, you move with intention. You speak with purpose. You choose your battles wisely. Your silence becomes as meaningful as your action. Seneca wrote, "The greatest blessings of mankind are within us and within our reach." Sovereignty is the moment you finally understand what he meant. You stop looking outward for strength, guidance, or identity because you've discovered all of it inside you. You become your own anchor. You become your own compass. And from that internal stability, your external life begins to shift naturally. Your relationships become cleaner because you no longer act from fear. Your ambitions become sharper because you're no longer distracted. Your presence becomes stronger because it's rooted, not performed. Sovereignty is not perfection. It is ownership of your mind, your emotions, your principles, and your path. And once you reach this state, life becomes simpler, not easier, but clearer. You no longer fight for control. You are control. You no longer chase power. You are power. If you've made it this far, it means something powerful. You're not just listening, you're transforming. Every part of this journey has been a reminder that real strength is built quietly, patiently, and deliberately. You don't rise by accident. You rise because you choose clarity over chaos, discipline over impulse, and purpose over noise. Carry this with you. Let it guide your decisions, steady your emotions, and sharpen your path. And if you're ready to keep building the mind that cannot be moved, the mind of a strategist, a warrior, a sovereign, then stay close. Subscribe, stay present, and keep walking with intention. Your silence is power. Your calm is your edge. Your growth has already begun. Thank you for being a part of this journey, and I'll see you in the next one.